Hello, guys. I think we should just begin. Yes. Yes. Then the rest will find the recording for the interest of time. I think they are protesting. That's why I've not joined. They are protesting. Yeah. So once you're able to confirm my audio, I'm audible, and also you can see the screen, then I'll begin. Someone to confirm. You can hear me well and also see my screen.
Yes, we can begin.
Oh, great, great, great. So yesterday we talked about the let me share this screen as well. Let me record. So yesterday um, it was about setting up the environments, and so today we want now the real work. We now want to begin the real task itself now, the coding itself. So it's going to get interesting. So make sure that you pay attention to this. And I told you yesterday that at this basics or at this intro, it's going to be the building block of what we are going to cover ahead. It's going to be somehow serious. So make sure that you master the very basics of which we are going to talk about it from today onwards. So yesterday we talked about the environments. I told you how you can download Python, how you can install the Jupyter notebook, and also how you can launch a notebook. I believe most of you tried, but some of you had issues. I think the system couldn't allow you to use notebook or something. So there's an option to use the Google Colab, which provides now the notebook, but now this one is online. You don't have to install anything. So for those who are struggling using the Jupyter notebook, you can just go to your browser and search for Colab, Google, Google, uh, Google Colab. Just search for Google Colab. I think I'll share the link there so that you can find it easier. You need to have a Google account. You need to have a Google account, and then just click on the Google Colab. You can sign up. In just a second, I think. Mhm. So you can create here a new notebook. You can see when you just click here notebook, you can create there a new notebook. So let me share with you the link so that you can just click on it. For those who are struggling to use the Jupyter notebook, okay, let me share on this platform. My cursor is a bit my mouse is a bit misbehaving, basically. Shit. Uh-huh. Can you guys hear me? I don't know. It's not a. Vile unaona screen yangu? Okay, okay. All right. So let me paste it here. Where's the chat? Now, for those who are having issues using the notebook, you can just use that Google Colab, and then when you click on that link, it's going to take you here. Then click on the new notebook. When you click on the new notebook, it's going to direct you to this page here. So just similar to the notebook we were using, here you can also rename the notebook. You can rename the notebook, perhaps you call it test or any name. Let's call it, let me just call it data science and data science. And then, yeah. So now here, this is where now you can write now the codes. So the cells that we are using on the Jupyter notebook from the local environment, now you can use the notebook, or these are the cells now on this Jupyter notebook. And then the features here are just similar to what we had in the Jupyter notebook. So you can change it to code. can create in here new cell for coding, and another one for text. If you just want to have a markdown to explain your code, you can change. You can add. You can use a text cell and all that. So first of all, I think you can confirm with me for those who are struggling yesterday. Are you able to access the notebook so that we may begin straight away to discuss Python?
Yeah.
For those who are using who are having issues with the not like using the notebook, does this option work for you? Are you able to find this page?
Yeah, I find it.
Okay, great, great. Now, for the rest of us who are using the Jupyter Notebook, I told you yesterday that once you install the latest version of Python, it will come with the PIP. PIP is the package manager to install the Python modules or packages. And the one that we installed yesterday was the Jupyter Notebook or Notebook. And so today, I just want to launch it so that we may begin to code straight away. And by the way, for those who send me their emails, I invited you to the course so you can find the recording there. Let me show you. So for those who did send me their emails, you can now access this course. You can access the course, and you'll find the recording there. I just want to confirm that that video is there. So you can find on the LMS, and also you can find it on that YouTube, the playlist that I had shared with you. Yeah, I see I have here 10 students, so it means that most of you are successful. So go to start course. If you can see the option to start the course, just click on it, and then it's going to uh, you can now access that page. For those who had issues with the with accessing from what we had discussed yesterday, you can find the recording there. And just a second, I show you. Yeah, you can find the recording here, setting up the Python environment for those who had the issues yesterday, perhaps with the network, or some of you did not manage to join. You can find the recording there. Uko na wireless mouse. Sijui mbona ina misbehave. Ni mouse. Yeah, so guys, basically this is how you can find. By the way, how many of you can access this LMS? Anyone who can manage the content on that LMS can view? Or no one? You can access?
I was able to dive in yesterday.
Okay, great, great,
I accessed
great.
it yesterday.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So now for those of us who are using the notebook, I told you that you can use now the command line. But then let me try to see if you people got what we talked about it yesterday. What is a command line? Anyone? What is a command line? A command line interface. Anybody who can try?
I think is where you put commands. It's
Yes.
it's not like the graphical user interface that the client access.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's like it's the one that this instruction.
Though you are breaking, but what you are saying is correct. Is correct. So you're just correct. Like just an interface where you can write now the commands instead of navigating like using the GUI. Now you're using the code. You're using the commands to do things like to navigate to different directory. When I say directory, I mean the folders, or maybe to delete a folder, to create a file and all that. So it's just an interface to write the commands. And so today we are using the CMD. If you are on Windows, and if you are on Mac, you can use Terminal. I talked about Terminal yesterday. But because I'm using Windows, I'm going to go to the command prompt, and let's navigate to where our project is. This is just a recap on what we did yesterday. So you CD to desktop, 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 desktop. Let me find the spelling for desktop. Desktop, desktop. Yeah. So it is desktop, and then a /row. If you want to navigate into, you're using the /. So if you want to navigate back, you'll use the backslash basically. So it is desktop, and then because we want now to navigate to this folder called Eldohub, we are going to type there Eldohub, Eldohub. Then we're able to navigate to that directory. And then now we can type Jupyter. That is if you had installed it. So Jupyter notebook, Jupyter notebook. Then it's going to open on your default browser. It's going to open on your default browser. Yeah, so we now have two options. So for those who are having issues on using the Jupyter notebook, you can use the Google Colab. And for those of us who can access the Jupyter notebook from the computer, then this is another option for you. Yeah, I believe up to this point, we are all together, right? Anyone who is having any issue, any confirmation, so that I may begin. Hello, guys, are you there?
Yes, yes.
You're good up to that?
Yeah, on my end, I'm all right.
All right, all right. So I think straight away we are going to introduce Python. And first of all, Python is a programming language. You know, for those who are new to tech, Python is a programming language. Like basically a computer doesn't understand our English language, or a Kiswahili, or a Luya, or Kamba, or a Chinese. So we have some specific language which can convert our human readable language to a computer, like to a computer language, so that it can understand what we are trying to say to it. Then it's going to do what we instruct it. Like, for example, if you want to tell it to print, for example, something like hello world. So basically, if you use a programming language like let's say Python, it's going to convert our language, which is much readable, to the computer language. Basically, computer just uses the zeros and the ones. It doesn't understand like our language. But now these tools like a Python now interprets, like convert our language, so that computer it can understand. Then a computer will compile that language. For example, if you want to return something to us, or maybe you want to output something, then it's going to decompile, so that like it's going to convert from the computer language to a way that we can understand. So first of all, Python is a programming language. And again, it's one of the most popular programming language. It can be used across different fields. Like at the moment, we are using Python for data science, but you can as well use Python to perform like a complex mathematics, to do web. We have the frameworks like a Django or a Flask, which are tools that we can use on the server side. And then you can use Python. you can use Python to create, software applications and all that. You can use it to do system scripting. For those who will be interested for perhaps in future to do cyber security and stuff. So Python can also be used to do the system scripting and all that. And also, I told you that Python can be used alongside software to create the workflows. And I'm going to tell you some basic syntax in Python. So first of all, if you want to execute anything to the terminal, if you want to output anything here to be visible here, you can use the print statement. So when you type print, is a function basically, and the function in Python must be enclosed inside the parentheses. So you type the word print and then open and close the parentheses. So if you want anything to be outputted, you have to add it inside the print function. So a function I told you earlier, it must have the parentheses at the end. So the statement, the function name, then the parentheses, and then in the inside now you can type anything. Like for example, let's say we want to do 1 plus 1, then this statement is going to give us an output here at the terminal. So the print statement is going to output or give us the results here at the terminal here. So and also I told you that the syntax in Python, these are just similar to the English language. Like I think most of you know the work of a printer. Printer is to do the output for those. I think some people did some basic packages, so you understand that we have um, the input and the output. So a tool that can be used, for example, to get an output is something like a printer. So when you see something print, you can easily tell that it deals with something to get an output or maybe to get a result from. So you can basically know that this statement is just similar to the English, not somehow complicated or something. So it is, the syntax are similar to the English language. So that's the first thing. And then another thing about Python, it is case sensitive. Like let me show you, I'm going to talk about the variables in a few, but let me just show you. For example, let me create here a variable called x, then assign it to a value like 100. Remember when I'm using the equal operator here in Python, I'm not equating this x to 100. This is an assignment operator. I'll talk about operators as well. But when I say x equal 100, basically I mean that I'm assigning this 100 to the variable x. So this x is going to be a container for 100. You can consider a variable as a water tank. Like you can store water to be used later. Now the variables also in Python, they are used like containers, but now these ones stores the data values to be used later. So for example, if I want to print at that 100, I'll not have to type here 100. I'll just type here x, then I'll get the result as 100. So this x has been used as a container for this value 100. So when I print now x, it's going to give us the result 100 because this is just a placeholder, a container for the 100 value, 100 value. And I've just told you that Python is case sensitive. Like if I've used here a small x and then I want to get an output with capital X, like Python is going to consider this X like as a different thing. So when I try to print, it's going to tell me undefined, like a X is not it's not defined because Python is case sensitive. So small x and a capital X, they are not different. So um, so it is this case sensitive. Another thing about Python, it considers indentation. Indentation is the space between the edges of your notebook and where you write your first character. Like assuming that we'll talk about the conditional statement later, but let's say we have, let's say we are using, or let me have here x to be 10, y to be 20. I believe most of you went to high school. so you can know some basic conditional statements. So for example, let's say if x is greater than, basically use the greater than symbol here, the angle bracket for greater than, to show that is a greater than, like to show, for example, if x is greater than y, then whenever you're using now an if statement or any conditional statement, it must end with the colon, So here I'm going to say if x is greater than y, then a colon, then here I can say print, for example, and I told you yesterday that a string, for example, if you want to print any word character or anything that involves characters, it's not integers, it must be defined inside the quotes. Though we have different data types like the booleans, we shall talk about the booleans later, but for strings, you must enclose them inside the quotes, either a double or a single quote, but you make sure that it has two quotes at the start and at the end. And then now in the inside, this is where now you can write your statement. So here I can say A is, or let me use x is greater than y. So you can see this statement is wrong, so I'll not get the result. First of all, let me change to be less than. So this statement is going to run because the statement is correct if x, which is 10, is less than, this symbol is for less than, y, then I'm going to print this statement. So basically, it's going to work only if x is less than a y. So I told you that it is sensitive to matters indentation. So the indentation is the space between the start of the, like from this edge, from the left to where you write your first character. So this white space stands for the indentation. So if I remove that space after a conditional statement, then I'm going to get an error here. You can see it tells me that expected and the intended block after if statement on line 14. So basically, I know some of you had some background in coding, like some of you who had done like some basic web development with JavaScript. You know that it's not case sensitive to indentation. You can just write it anywhere. But now for Python, you need to add the indentation. And what is recommended in the Python exceptional proposal, or a PEP 8, it is eight spaces. So you click on tab, like a 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you use 1, it will still work. 1, it will still work. You'll get the result. But what they recommend is 4 spaces, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can just click on tab on your keyboard. You click on tab, then it's going to create like those 4 spaces for you. So remember, all this stuff we are going to discuss seriously, but I want to give you like the basic syntax on Python, like how Python works. So first of all, we realize that it is sensitive to cases, and then another thing that I will just identify or seen, it is sensitive to the indentation. Yeah. So up to this point, anyone with a question? Are you still there?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Basically, I can't see the screen when I'm at this page. So in case you do a reaction, I won't see. So make sure that you unmute and talk, because I can't see the other screen. Perhaps if you confirm if they're raising the hand or something. So make sure that you talk so that I can know we are still together. I always like an active class. When I ask question, I get the answers, the response. Yeah. So that was the basic, like how Python works. And also there's something that in future you'll be writing, like let me show you an example here. You won't be writing this symbol code. You won't be writing this basic code. Let me show you an example of how you'll be writing the code once you master Python. You'll be writing a of codes. Let me show you something. Okay, let me use Python. I have Python here. Now, okay, just a second. I believe you can still see the screen. I believe I shared my entire screen. Let me see.
Yes, you can see.
Yeah, so you want to be writing those symbol syntax. So you'll be writing a lot of code here, like you can see this code, but I didn't write this code in a proper way because there's something that I want to illustrate to you, to explain to you. Like I know you'll not be writing the codes alone, you'll be collaborating with other people. So it is very, very significant to include comments on your code. So basically the comments, these are not code to be executed. These are just, for example, to tell someone that this part I was trying to write an algorithm, for example, a binary search algorithm, and here I was just trying to create here, I use a model or something like that. So this one, the comments are not executed, but they just help someone to understand the code. So they won't be executed. Like, for example, let me write here. So basically the comments in Python, they begin with the hash. Like when I begin with hash and say, let me say the following is conditional statement. And the following is a conditional statement. So you can see there's no effect here at the terminal. But if I remove now this hash, I'm going to get an error here that there's an invalid syntax, because I told you that if you want to write anything which involves characters, you need to define it inside the quotes, be it a single or a double quote. But if you just want to explain your code with a comment, then you begin with a hash. You begin with a hash, then someone can easily know that this code you are trying to write a conditional statement here. So, like the best way for me here, I could have done, for example, in this code here, perhaps I could add here a comment that says, let me write here a code, and then I'll say, here is a user, sorry, a user view set. You know, someone who is new can easily know that this part you are trying to create a view set for the user. So the comment, they just help a developer understand the code much better. You know, it's not a must, like it's not like they just help you to understand the code, because for example, you've written the code now, and then perhaps you've come to it like 2 years later, you will need time to understand, for example, what you had written. So this code or a comment, they just help you understand your code much easier. So they are not executed, but they help you understand your code. Or maybe if you are interacting with other developers, so it will make them understand your code very well without going through code by code to understand what your program is doing, or maybe your code is doing. You've understood up to that about the comments?
Yes, very well.
Yeah. And basically, like in other languages, you can do a multi-line comments. Like, for example, if you have several lines, like let's say you want to um, add in another comment, like, for example, let's say, hello there. So there's no single command that you can make all of this stuff to be a comment. Like if you are doing something like let's say JavaScript, or maybe you're doing CSS, you will have like to define. You can like make this multi-liner comment by doing a forward slash and then a asterisk, and then you also add in another one there at the end. Then it's going to comment everything there. Everything. But now in Python, there's no command to create a multi-line comment. So for the lines that you want to make them a comment, you'll have to begin on all those lines. You'll have to begin with a hash to make it a comment. To make it a comment. So you'll have to like make every line this way, so that Python will understand it as a comment. But there's an option that you can create these multi-line comments by using the string literal. So you can use a string literal, which will make several lines comments. And to create a string literal, you can create here a variable. For example, let's say string. Let me just call it string, or let me just call it text. So text, then you assign. Then here, now you can add in now 3 quotes. When you want to create a string literal, you have to begin with the 3 quote, 1, 2, 3. Then it also ends with the 3 quotes. So Python will not will ignore this part. Like this way, it will be like it will run without any issues. It will now run without any issues here. But remember a string is defined with a single quote and a double quote. So if I try to say it like it begins with a single and ends with a single quote here, still it's not going to work. I'm going to get the error, despite I've begun with a single and I've ended with the single quote. Like this is a pair of double quotes. So, but if I want to define a multi-line string, you have to use 3 pair of quotes like that, so that Python may consider it as a string literal. But in a nutshell, there's no command to create a multi-line comments. So for every comment, you have to begin with the hash. You have to begin with the hash so that Python can consider it as a comment. But if you want to do a multi-line, I know you want to do, for example, the documentation about your, for example, we'll talk about the functions, the methods, the classes. So you'll want also to provide a more description about your code. So that's when now you can do a docstring, which is written this way. Doctrine, of which is like a documentation to explain your code. So basically, you'll be writing this way, but we'll talk about it later. But just know that there's no single command that you can make a multi-line comment in Python. So you have to begin with the hash on all those lines. And once again, the comments, they just used to help developers understand the code structures, what the code does and stuff, instead of like a new person going through your code one by one to understand your code. So they just help you, like it's not a mandatory, but it's just a best way to use comments in your code so that in case someone interacts with your code, will easily know what your code does, so that they may save also on time. Yeah. So up to that, I think we are together so that I can proceed to the next section.
Yes, we are good. Proceed.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So now I want us to begin with a very, very serious part on Python. And I think this one you should pay more attention, because everything now will depend on what we am going to introduce to you, something called variables. Variables. And I think I had touched on it earlier. Let me write here, markdown. Variables. So variables in Python, the way I told you earlier, like I used an example of a water tank, which can store water to be used later. Now variables, these are like containers, but now this one stores data values to be used later. So instead of like I told you earlier, like for example, if you want to print a hello world, you'll have to define it. Like you write print, then in the inside you type, for example, hello world, hello world. So you'll have to write it this way so that you get an output is a hello world. So the variables, they help you to write something somewhere else. Then I use a variable name to get the same output. So here I could have said, for example, greetings, greetings. Then I assign it to this string instead. So when you use the equal operator I told you earlier, it means you are not equating, you are assigning this value hello world to the variable greetings. So unlike other programming language, like if you came from C++ or a C, or maybe you came from JavaScript, you had learned JavaScript, you were to define variables. For example, if it's a string, you like for example, if you want to define a constant variable, use a const keyword. If it's just a normal variable, you can use, for example, a let keyword, let, or a var, or something like that. But now, variables in Python are created as soon as you assign a value to it. Like this way, when I assign this hello world to this variable greetings with this assignment operator equal, then this one is going to be a variable automatic. I don't have to say like a const greeting or a let greetings be hello world. So when you just write greetings, then automatically, and then you assign a value to it with the assignment operator, is going to automatically be a greetings. So now instead of writing here hello world, I will just pass this variable name called greetings. I'll just pass this variable name called greetings. Then I'll get the output is hello world. So this greetings has been used as a placeholder for the hello world. It's just a container for the value hello world. So the variables, these are just containers to store data value. So that instead of writing, like assuming that, let me write something long. Hello there. My name is Nehemiah. My name is Nehemiah. So that instead of writing a long statement here, I will just pass here a variable greetings, and then it's going to print the entire statement here. So you can see now the advantage of having the variables. They just store everything so that you can write here a few lines of code. And also advantage of variables, they are reusable. They are reusable. Like for example, let's say I wanted to print again these greetings in a new line. I will just say print, and then I'll just use the variable name that I had used earlier, greetings, and then I'll pass here, and then I'm going to get the same result hello there. So you realize that variable names are reusable. They are reusable. And I remember whenever you're using the variable names, you don't have to begin with the quotes. You don't have to begin with the quotes. The string itself is the ones that I use. You use the quotes. But now for the variable names, you don't have to begin with the quotes. You just write the name itself, and then uh, you pass the same variables here, like in the print statement. If you in the event you want to get an output there. So variables can store different data types. Variables can store different data types. So an example here, this one is a string. This one is a string. And if you want to know the data type, you can use a type function to get the data type. Like let's say we want to know the type of this statement here. I will just, let me use a new cell. If I want to get the data type of this variable greetings or this value here, I will just say, I'll use the type function, type. Now this one is also another function in Python, built-in function, type, which is used to get the type of the objects or a data type. So when I just pass this variable, of which we know that is a container for this value, hello there, my name is Nehemiah. When I just pass there, I'm going to get str, which stands for a string. So if I change here to an integer, like let's say greetings to be 100, then you'll see it will change to integer, which is an integer. So the type function is used to get the type of the function that you are using. So the type function. So the first one it was a string. This one is a string. And if you write a full integer or something like 100, you're going to get an int. But for example, if it's a real number has decimal, like for example, 100.50. So the number that has decimal, they are called the floating point. They have the floating point number, or the real numbers. Any number that has decimal is a floating point, a floating number, a float. When I run, you can see now I'm getting now the float. So you realize that a Python will automatically create a data type depending on how you have defined it. You don't have to say like it's a float or a string or something. Python will automatically detect that this one is a float number, this is a Boolean type, or maybe a string type or something like that. So So the key thing here, I've talked about the type of which is used to get the data type. Also, let's try something here. Let's have x uh, to be 100, and then a y, let's use it. Let's assign it. Remember, I told you that whenever we are using the equal operator, we are not equating, we are assigning. So when I say to be 200, so now instead of saying like, for example, print, initially I told you an example, I showed you an example, for example, to get an output here, you could have used, for example, 100 plus 200, you'll get the result. So instead of like passing the 100 and 200, you can simply pass x plus y, because we know x is a container for 100. So when we pass here x, it's going to be a placeholder for 100, or maybe the container for 100, or maybe it represents this 100, then y represents 200. So when we pass here, it's going to get, we are going to get here the same result. Let me try to increase so that you may know that there is something different. So you can see we get the different data type. But also another thing about the variables, you can't, like for example, whenever you're using the plus operator to concatenate or to join. Now on this one, we are trying to add things together, like we are trying to add 1,000 plus 200, so we are getting 200. But you cannot add, for example, a string like let's say z to be, let's use a string like a hello, and then here let's say plus z, will not get a result because we are trying to add an integer plus a string. So automatically we are going to get the error. But if I could have used, for example, a floating point number, 100.6, then it's going to work. So for example, if I want to concatenate or maybe to add together the numbers, or maybe any numbers, be it an integer, a float, or a complex. We shall talk also about the complex later. It must be similar. Like if you wanted, for example, to concatenate strings, for example, let's say x to be Nehemiah, then a y to be Wekesa. So this way I can be able to concatenate it because they are both strings. To concatenate is like to join. If you are doing arithmetic operation, so for example, the plus is for adding things together. But now in the event you are using the strings, it means that you are concatenating. Concatenation is another term for joining things together. So in this way, I'll be able to join Nehemiah, which is we are representing it with X and then a Y for Wekesa. So the output is going to be Nehemiah Wekesa. But then you realize that there's no space here. So if you want to create a space here, it means that here you need to create here an extra space. After Nehemiah, you can create here a space like that, so that when you join, it's going to join this Nehemiah, which has a space here at the end, plus Wekesa, so that the words may not be close to one another. Alternatively, you can use an empty string here, like a x, and then a plus, then you also include a string, an empty string that has a space like that. So you realize that there's a space here that I've left, and then a plus y. So it is going to join x, of which is Nehemiah, and then a plus space, and then plus y, of which is our Wekesa. So I'll be able to get like a result which is much more, readable. Yeah, first of all, before I proceed up to that point, are we still together?
Yes.
Wonderful confirmations. Now, another thing, now let's say you had an integer and then you want to convert it to a float point. Remember I told you that a floating number is any number that has decimal in it. They are called the real number or a floating point numbers. So let's say we had let's say I've used x and y for long. Let me use a to be 100, but now I want to get the result as a floating point number. I want to convert this integer to a float number. So when I say print, first of all, let me say print A, of which I told you earlier that the print statement is used in the event you want to get output there, which this one is going to just give us a result, an output of 100. So like that's the function of the print statement, the print function. So if you want to get the type, we'll use the type. You can as well use the type inside the print. You can say print, and then in the inside of this print, you can as well type here the type. So we are using it as a nested function. We are using a nested function inside the print statement. So print is also a function, but also in the inside, we also have another function called type. We also have another function in the inside called type. So here, when we pass here A, this statement is going to get us the type of the data type of the value 100, of which we know at the moment is int. You can see now it is telling us it is an integer. It is an integer. But to make our work easier, let me just remove that print so that I can just use a type function so that we can easily understand. So it is an int. Now, let's assume that we want to convert this integer to a floating point number. So it means I'm going to create here a new variable called b, and then I can now introduce here a constructor to convert this 100 to a float. Like, let's say we want to convert it to a floating point. We'll use a float keyword, float, like that, because it's a function. I told you that function must have the parentheses. So you enclose it inside the parentheses, opening in the closing of the parentheses. Then now I'm going to pass here a. I'm going to pass here a, of which we know that a is the value, is a variable for 100. So when I print now b, they also get the type of b, then it's going to change here to a float. So now you can see now the value is a float. You can see now it has a decimal. Initially it had not, it didn't have the decimal, but now the output, it has a decimal. So this process, we call it type conversion. Now, type conversion, this is where you had an original data type, of which in our case we had an integer, but now we are converting to a different type called float. And I told you that the floating point numbers, these are numbers with the decimals. They have the decimal. These are the real numbers, the numbers with the decimal. So those are called the floating number. And that the number which is just whole number, be it a negative or a positive number, they are called integers. They are called integers. We shall talk about another type of number called the complex later. But I believe you've understood like the type conversion. Once again, type conversion, this is a process where you had an original data type, then you convert it to a different data type. Like in this case, we had an integer, then we are using the float function to convert it to a floating point number. Also, we can convert it to a string with the str function. When we say str a, then automatically it's going to convert this 100 to a string. It's going to convert it to a string because we have used a string constructor. So you can see now the output is str. It is str. But remember, you cannot convert a string to an integer unless it's like, for example, let's say we had something like Nehemiah, or let me use hello. Sitaki ni market jina yangu sana. Let me use a different one like hello. So when I say hello, I want to convert it to an integer, or this one is, let me use int. Basically, it's not going to work because we know these are characters. You cannot convert it to a number. So you can say I'm now getting an error. So invalid literal for int with base 10. So hello. So in the event I had something that involves number, like let's say we had something like 100. We know that basically this is a string, even if we have defined it, even if we have numbers in the inside, but provided we have used the quotes to now be considered is a string. So, but because they are all numbers, I can convert it to an integer. When I run, you will see I'll get now the output is integer because they are numbers. But in the event you had something like a B, C, D, that one you cannot convert it to a number because we know A cannot, there's no way you can convert, for example, a character to a number. But in the event you had a string, but that string is numbers, and then you can convert it to an integer. So this whole process is called type conversion. If someone is writing, you can write type conversion is a process where you convert an original data type to a different data type. All right. Now, I believe up to this point we are still together. I want to explain another concept. Any confirmation? Are we still there?
Yes, we are there. Yeah.
How are things going? Is it difficult or are you understanding?
We are trying to absorb.
All right.
Okay.
Don't worry. I think the best way to understand these things is to practice because I'm providing the recording. Make sure that at the end of the class, you can as well try to practice. Try to practice later so that you may absorb
Okay.
these things very well. I know
So,
at the moment when I tell you to practice on your end, you won't understand what I'm trying to talk. I think the best way is to first of all listen, understand, then you can do it later on your own. But I'll provide also the recording so that you can follow along. Also I'm trying to rush with the time frame. I don't want to rush at the end when we want to approach the the 4 months thing. So this process is called type conversion. But in the event you just want to define, like let's say you just want to define at the original variable definition, you want to define the type of that variable. That process is called typecasting. Like for example, let's say we had a variable called w, and then at the variable definition, we make it, for example, a floating point. Let's say we say float, and then in the inside in the function, we pass here an 100. So we know that this 1000 1000 is an integer, but when we are defining this variable w, we are giving it a floating point number. So this process is called casting. You remember here we don't have an original variable which was something like an integer, and then we are trying to convert it as a float. Remember initially here we had an original type like this one, it was a string, and then we are converting it to an integer. But now here we are directly converting that type at the variable definition. So you can see here I'm defining a new variable called w, but at the same time I'm converting it to a floating point number. You can see the value in the inside is an integer. So when I print, let's say print w, print w, I'm going to get a floating point number. Or let me try to use a type as well. Let me type here type. So the output here is, when I pass that type here, I'm going to get a float. So you realize here that I'm defining the data type and the variable definition. When I'm defining this w, at the same time, I'm converting this int to a floating point number, this integer to a floating point number. So this process where you define the data type at the variable definition is called casting. It's called typecasting. We are converting from an integer type to a floating type, but at the variable definition, we did not have an original data type called integer so that we may convert it to a float. Here we are trying to convert at the same variable definition. We are converting the integer to the floating point number. So this process is called casting. For example, let me try to use a str constructor or a function So this process, the output here is going to get, we are going to get an str. The output, you can see it is an str. So you realize here we did not have an original variable that had an integer, and then we converted it with str to a new data type floating point. So this process called casting. I believe you guys have understood the difference between the type conversion and the type casting.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have understood, try to explain to me what is the difference between typecasting and type conversion.
Typecasting is like doing several operations at a go. So where you define and you are converting at the same time. But
Great.
type conversion is just doing one operation where you convert maybe a string to a float or to an integer.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you've said that typecasting, this is where you are trying to convert to a different data type, but at the variable definition, you did not have an original and the data type that you are trying to convert. This one, you are trying to convert at the same line, at the same variable definition. But now type conversion, you had an original data type, then later you try to convert it to a different data type. So that process is called type conversion. In typecasting, you convert it at the same time, like at the same time when you're defining the variable. Yeah. I believe that's clear, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I know in the real world scenario, you'll not be writing A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. You'll be writing like a variables to be something like first name, last name, like something descriptive that people can understand. Let me show you. I think here I have an example. Um, like you can see here, for example, email or username is something descriptive. It's not X and Y, so that to make people understand your code very well. Like if it is query set, you write something which is much more descriptive. So I want to give you like some rules which usually apply when you are using a multi-word variable, multi-word variable definition. In the event you want to use several words. Like let's say you want to have a variable called my first name, my first and last name, because we know that variable you cannot have like a spaces. You cannot say like a first name to be a variable like a first space name, and then you say Nehemiah string Nehemiah. So this way it will not like it doesn't work. You cannot create a space whenever you are defining a variable. So assuming that you have a long variable name like my first, is that the spelling for first? My first and last name. So and then you say, for example, Nehemiah Wekesa. I'm sorry, I'm using my name severally, but in lack of a proper thing to use. So you can see, because I'm the one who has written this variable name, I can easily understand what it means. But assuming that someone who is just new to my code, I think they will find it difficult to read this variable name, because I told you that the variable name, whenever you're using a descriptive variable name, it should be readable. It should be somehow readable, so that the new people will understand your code. So you can see in this case, people will find it difficult to read your variable. Like in the event in this project, you can see someone can easily know that this is permission class because there's a space here, there's separate permission in the class. Serializer, someone can easily know that this is a serializer underscore class. And another variable, like you can see they are somehow readable, the variables. So if you write like a complete continuation of words, someone cannot easily understand. So there are several proposals that I'm going to explain in a few. if in the event you want to use a multi-word variable names. But before I go there, there are some rules that usually apply whenever you are defining the variables in Python. I think first of all, let me try to illustrate the rules before I talk about the naming convention on variable names. So first of all, the rule number one on the variable, if you are writing, if someone is writing, first of all, we understood that variable names can be created with X, Y, or maybe this symbol word like X, Y, A, B, C, D. But in most cases, you can use a long name like something descriptive names. So whenever you're using these descriptive names, basically you need to consider several rules in Python whenever you are trying to create a variable name. First of all, a variable name must start with a letter or the underscore. Strictly a letter or an underscore. So you can only begin with let's say my, let me say my, then variable, my variable, then I say, for example, 100. In fact, let me just remove this one at the moment. I don't know if it will confuse. Let me just delete it first. So this way, when I say print, and I remember when you want to print, you need to use the same variable name that you had written so that it will work. I told you that Python is case sensitive. So ensure that whenever you have defined your variable, ensure that you're using it exactly the same way. So here I'm going to get the result. And I told you that it can only begin with a character, with a letter or an underscore. So here I'm getting the result because it has begun with a letter. And if I use an underscore, underscore, it is this symbol. When I begin with an underscore, it's going to work. So whenever you are defining your variable, ensure that it only uses either an underscore or a character. So you can see here that I can get the result. But if I use another special character apart from a letter or an underscore, like I try to use an equal operator or a plus, and then I call it with a plus, basically I'm going to get an error. So for variable names, you have to begin either with an underscore, or a letter whenever you are defining the variable. So that's the rule number one. Now, rule number two, variable name cannot start with the number. Remember, I'm saying it cannot start. It means that it can end with the number, or maybe it can have a number in the inside, but it cannot start with the number. Like, for example, you say at a first variable, you begin with one variable, then I try to call it with one. And I think the same refers to the first rule, of which I told you that variable names can only have the letter and an underscore. This one we are trying to introduce a number. So basically, this one opposes the first rule. So this is just to reiterate on the first rule. So it cannot have a number, but you can have a number at the end. Like for example, variable one, my variable one, you can end it with the number, you'll get the result. And then you can as well have, you can also have a number as well here at the start, like let's say 110. So the only place where you cannot begin, you use a number is at the start, because I said it cannot start with a number. So that's the rule number two. And then now the rule number three, variable names can only contain the alphanumeric characters and underscore. It can only contain the alphanumeric characters and the underscore, which means that you cannot have anything apart from either numbers, letters, or underscore. It means that it can only have these three options: either numbers, one to whichever number you want to use, or characters A to Z, or the underscore, which means that you cannot have anything apart from this is your variable. Like you cannot say underscore or a hyphen at the end, or anywhere in between. You cannot use anything apart from the alphanumerics and underscore. Underscore, I told you it is this thing, this symbol here. you can use this one, but you cannot use any other special character apart from the underscore. So it is underscore, letters, and the numbers. Now, the rule number what? Rule number what? If you are following.
4.
Number 4.
Yeah, so the rule number 4 about the variables, they are case sensitive. They are case sensitive. Like, for example, let's say, let me use age. Let me use something descriptive. Let me say age to be, age, let me use 30. So when I pass here age, of course, it's going to work because I've used the exact variable. But now if I begin here with capital, I say age, I remember they are all the same thing, but now what is changing here is the cases. So you can see, I'm going to get the result that age is not defined. Remember in other languages, in other languages, they are not case sensitive. Like if you're using a different language, mostly, they are not sensitive to cases. But now for Python, it is case sensitive. So ensure that the variable that we've used is the same variable that you're trying to call it with, or maybe you're trying to use it. So that's the rule number 4. It is case sensitive. And then lastly, that's rule number 5. The variable names cannot be any of the Python keywords. You know, we have the built-in keywords in Python. Like, for example, we have a statement like, for example, if you want to import a package, you can use import statement, import, import. So you cannot use this built-in function in Python. You don't have to master all the built-in function statements, but you can see here I've used it correctly, like it is written very well, import, then I'm trying to call it properly, but because it's a built-in function in Python, it's going to throw an error. Or there's another keyword, like for example, let's try to use del, which is a keyword to delete things. We'll talk about it later. So these are built-in keywords in Python. So this statement it will not work. You cannot use the built-in keywords in Python. So you don't have to master the keywords in Python, but ensure whenever you're defining your variables, use something descriptive so that you may not find yourself that you're using a built-in keyword. Like for example, let's say you want to use a main function, a main statement to get the minimum value, mean, then here you say mean. So of course they are the same, like it follows the rules for variable definition, but now because it's a built-in keyword, it's not going to work. Sorry, I don't know why it's working, but it shouldn't work. But the idea here is you cannot use the built-in keywords in Python. So those are the rules on using the variable names. Any question to the rules for variable names?
So in a case like where you are defining a variable,
Yes.
let's say my first name. So can you use on my M as uppercase?
Yeah. You can use it. You can use it. In fact, that's the next thing that I'm going to talk about, the naming convention for variables. I'm going to explain those naming convention in a few. After this part,
Okay.
I'm going to explain the naming convention for variables. Right. Yeah. Any other question? Wow, it means today I have smart people. They just understand at the at a go. Like, yeah, this is wonderful. So the next thing I want to talk about the naming convention or the naming rules. So for example, I told you earlier, like for example, if you have something like my variable, let me say my first variable name, then I say Nehemiah string. So you can see it's not even readable. Someone cannot easily understand. Even if it were uppercase, but just a continuation of words, someone will not understand. Though it is correct, it will work. It will work because it has considered, it has followed the rules of variable names definition. It has followed the rules. It's going to work, but you can see it's not even readable. It works though, but it's not readable. So Python came up with some naming convention that you can use, provided you follow the rules for variable names. So the first a naming convention is called the, not first, but the one that I want to begin with is the camel case. The camel case, a naming convention. So for the camel case, each word except the first start with a capital. Like let's say my, then my first variable, then name, my first variable name. And then for example, when I say Nehemiah, and then you can see, let me write here a comment so that people will understand in case you are writing. So let me say this is a camel case naming convention, camel case. So you can easily read this variable because the initial of the variable of the words stand out, they are capital. Someone can easily know because we have things which stand out, like this first V stand out, the second N, the stand out. So for the camel case, each word except the first word start with the capital. So the only word that doesn't begin with the capital is the first word, but the rest of the words have the capitals in the capital letters in the initial of those words. So this naming convention is called the camel case. The camel case. So when I say print, and I say here, I pass this statement here. So you can see it's somehow readable compared to if it were all the small cases. This one is somehow readable. This one is somehow readable because we have things which stand out on the words. It's working. So the second thing, the second naming convention is called the Pascal case. Pascal case naming convention. So this one, similar to the camel case, the Pascal case, each word begins with the capital. Each initial letter of words begins with the capital. Like instead of, like in the camel case, the first word did not begin with the capital. They are all small cases, but the subsequent words began with capitals. But now for the Pascal case, all the initial of the word begins with the capital. Like for example, my variable name. You can see initial words begin with a capital. So this naming convention is called a Pascal case. So for Pascal case, each word is separated by each word starts with a capital letter. Each word starts with a capital letter. The only difference from the camel case, on the camel case, the first word doesn't begin with a capital, but subsequent begins with a capital letter in each word. But now for Pascal case, every word, including the first word, begins with a capital letter. So this is the second naming convention in Python, like what Python proposes. And then also another naming convention for multi-word variables is called the snake case convention. So this one, you separate words with an underscore. Like we'll say my underscore variable underscore name. Okay, let me change here first of all too. So this process is called the snake case. Snake case or underscore. Let me add here. Underscore case naming convention. So each word is separated by an underscore. Like in the event you are using a multi-word variable. So people can easily read your variables. So let me use here an example. If you can see, let me find something here that I want someone to quickly read something here. I want someone to quickly read something. Someone can read this one. Like I just quickly. This variable here. Quickly.
Email underscore or underscore username.
Yeah, so you can see someone can easily read because we have like some separation. You can easily like words are separated. Like this is the snake case naming convention. So someone who is new to your code can easily read what you like can easily understand your variable. Like here, someone can easily know that this is email or username variable. So can just know that this variable stand for the email or username because we have some separators for each word. So like these proposals will just make your code much more readable. It's not just writing the code, but write code which makes sense that are readable. Yeah, so these are the three naming convention that Python proposed for this naming convention. I believe I've answered someone who asked about if you can begin with the capital or something.
Yes, very well.
Yeah. Any question up to this point?
You talked about building keywords.
Yes.
There's a time I tried writing print with
Yes, yes.
capital P and I got an error.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah,
which means
yeah. Mm.
which
I
means
had just yes, yes. Continue.
those building keywords we just write them in small letters.
Yeah. Because Python is, I told you earlier, that it's sensitive to cases. Like at this print statement, it's not similar to when you write print in capital. Python is case sensitive. So you can see now it's not defined, this print statement. But if you use a print in small, is going to work. I think at this describe the print statement like they describe like a sensitivity of cases in Python very well, like this print or maybe type, even type. Where did we use the type? Here, when I use capital, the type in capital, it's not going to work because in the building, a function for type is defined as small type. It is defined as a small type. So when you try to use it in capital, then it's going to throw an error because that's not what was defined in the Python. In the Python, you've understood?
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Any other question? Because today I want to finish variables. I don't want to give you a lot. I just want to finish on the variables so that I can give you time to digest, and then we'll proceed. Any question there?
Yeah, apart from the underscore, what else or which what do you say? What can you use in the replacement of over underscore?
The underscore, because I told you earlier, like the rules for defining the variables is that you can only use the letters. You can also use the underscores and the numbers, but numbers cannot start. You can use the number anywhere in between, but it cannot start. So provided you follow those rules, then you can define your variables whichever way you wish, provided it follows the rules for variable definition to create a variables, of which I had told you earlier that it cannot start with a number, and it can only begin with an underscore or a letter or those rules. So provided you follow those rules, and then your variable is going to work. But the proposals for defining variables, there are these three, like a Pascal camel case, of which each word, apart from the first, begins with a capital letter. And then for Pascal case, every word begins with a capital in the initial letter, begins with a capital. And then for snake case, words are separated with an underscore. I don't know if I've answered you. Yeah.
You have.
All right, all right. Any other question? Any other question? So it means the rest have understood. Let me just choose a random person because I don't want to ask the question I'm going to ask you. Let me ask. I don't know someone who has been talking. Is it Felician? The one who has just asked the question. I don't know your names because I don't want to. Or let me use someone who is a boy. Daniel. Daniel, let me ask you a question. What is the do you know any rule about the variable, or I can mention any first rule on variable definition or a variable creation? Any rule that you need to consider when you are defining a variable, creating a variable, any rule?
So it must only contain
Daniel.
alpha. Yes. It should contain alpha numeric or underscore.
Alpha, yeah, that's wonderful. Another rule, Vincent? Any
Can
other
you
rule that you
repeat the
need to
question?
consider when you're
Can I get the
what
question once again?
rule?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Let me repeat. Which rule should
Yeah.
you follow when you are creating a variable name? Any of the rules?
It shouldn't start with a capital letter.
Yes. Pardon?
Yeah.
Pardon?
Like when writing a variable name, you shouldn't start with a capital letter.
You should not start with a capital letter, really?
Okay, the camel case is like you write the like each word,
Yes,
it should be like there shouldn't be a space between the words. And for the camel case, it should be like all of them, each of the words should be in capitals.
All right. So basically, those are proposal. Those are not rules. Basically, the rules when you are defining a variable, so it's like the one that Daniel has said, that it can only begin with a letter or an underscore, or I can only contain the alphanumeric and the underscore. But so for the proposals, now this is where now you can define. You can say like for example, for Pascal case, the initial of each word, or maybe the letters of each word starts with a capital. So those are just proposal. But now the rules itself, it's like what Daniel had said, that it can only begin with either an underscore or a letter, and also it can only have the alphanumerics in the underscore, which means that you cannot have anything apart from characters, numbers, or underscore, or maybe you decide to use a hyphen or asterisk or any other special character in your variable definition. It means that it can only contain either letters, the numbers, and the underscores. I think you've understood now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we are saying, those are proposal, like what Python proposed when you are defining the variables. But now the rules itself, they are the one that I had told you earlier. Like you cannot use the built-in keyword to define your variables and all those things that I had explained earlier. Yeah. Any other person that wants me to ask him a question or her a question? User. User, you want to say something? User. All right, it's fine. So I think I want to finish perhaps because I want to completely finish the variables. Now, in variables, you can, like you can see here earlier, we were saying X, Y, Z, like in different lines, but you can as well define variables on the same line. Like you say X, you separate them with a comma. X, you say a comma, then a Y, comma, then Z, and then, for example, you assign all of them. Remember, because we have 3 variables, it means that we need to give it 4 values. So I'll say here the first one to be 10, and then the second one to be Y. To represent Y, it will be like it follows like is it chronology? Is it that order? it follows this order. So this thing is going to be a variable, like it's going to be a value for variable x. Then if you add another value like a 20, it's going to be a value for variable y. And then z, if you give it 30, then this value that is going to be a value for variable x. So when I say print, print first one is x. Let me just duplicate. So the second one is going to be y. The third one is going to be z. So I'm going to get the result is 10, 20, that. You can see now z is at the last option that we've used here, which is stand for 30. So you can define your variables like at the same line, And then at the same time, you can give a value to multiple variables. So like, for example, instead of like giving x a value, y a value, z a value, and then you can just define, for example, you give all of them x, y, and z. You give them a single value like 100. So it means that x is going to have a value 100, y is going to have a value z. I'm confused. So x is going to have 100, y is going to have 100, z is going to have 100. So here, sorry. Okay, it's giving me here an error that it cannot unpack. It cannot unpack. Oh, okay. I think the best way I could have used, so instead of comma, you use the equal, which it means that x equals to y equals to z instead of a comma. If you want to like assign several variables to a single value, you will have to use the equal operator. So it means that x is going to be same as y, is going to be the same as z, which is going to be 100. So this way, all of them are going to have the same value, 100. So you can assign several variables, like you can assign a single value to several variables. Is it clear? Hello guys, is it clear up to that?
Yes.
So how can you, someone that has said yes, how can you like assign, like define variables, like a different variables on the same line? What is the process that you'll use? For example, if you want to define like several variables at the same line, like instead of having different lines, how can you define several variables at the same line of code? Who was it? Or any other person, basically. Which process will you take if you want to like define several variables in a single line instead of having several lines?
Is it using the commas?
Yeah, true. Yes? Pardon?
I said, like, I saw where you were using like commas to separate the x, y, and z.
Yeah. That's true. Another thing about when you are trying, so that's the first answer. But also, what about on the value? I want another person. So if you have separated your variables with the comma, what about the values? Any other person on the values now? So for variable names, you separate them with the comma, but now on the value side. So on the value side, if you don't want to say, on the value side, you use the same number, like it should have the same, like for example, if you've used here 3 commas, you've separated thrice, x, y, and z. So it means that you need to give it 3 values because you have 3 variables. So it means that you need to give it 3 variables because, and then z, let me say, sorry, not z, let me say, or whichever number, 200. So it means that whenever on the value side, you need to give it the same number because we have 3 variables. It means that we need to give it 3 values as well. Otherwise, for example, if you use 2, one it will say, for example, Z, it will say that it is undefined. You can see we are getting out the error. So it means that whenever you are defining your several variables at the same line, it should have the same number of values, like here to be 200, then you'll get it this way. So the process of defining several variables at the same line, first option is to separate variables with the comma, then you assign the values to those variables separated in the commas respectively. So like for example, if X has begun here on the value side, the first value will be for X, then the second one is going to be represented is going to be a variable for 300, then Z is going to be a value for 200. Is that clear? If you have understood this one, then we are going to end.
Yeah.
You've understood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So wonderful, wonderful. So guys, because you guys are beginner, I don't want to complicate it. So go and practice on the variables. Go and practice on the variables. Make sure that you've mastered how you can define variables, how you can use a print statement, how you can use a type function to get a type. I'll provide the recording on the same LMS. So for those who are not in the LMS, make sure that you send me the link, and then ensure that when you are registering, you register with the same email so that you may have access to the LMS. So you'll find the recording there, and make sure that you practice. You practice a lot. So I'm trying to cover a lot because data science is somewhat broad. So I want to cover a lot so that at the end of it, I can produce people who can do something out there, can solve problems out there. I don't want just to cover the program, but at least produce people who can solve the real world problem. So I'm trying to cover a lot. That's why you can see I'm spending around 2 hours or something just to explain these things. So ensure that you are also following the pace. So make sure that at the end of this session, you can also rewind the video, you can follow the recordings, and make sure that you've mastered what we've talked about today. Remember the coding, in coding, like in programming generally, you cannot say that you've mastered how you can define a variable and then you say you are good. You have to practice severally because like for me, if I stop coding today and then come 2 years later, I will need to go again to the books because like you can see in tech, things are changing day in, day out. You realize that, for example, for Python, we had Python 3.11. Then at the moment we are using Python 3.12. So you realize that these things are dynamic. So it means that you have to keep on practicing, checking on the latest technologies to ensure that you are at the, you like you practice several. That's the thing that I want to outline. Like you need to practice a lot. Like for example, if you've learned the variables, make sure that you go and practice how to use the variables, different ways on how you can define variables. If you get an error, don't panic. By the way, you need to get the error so that you can know how to debug. To debug is now to remove those errors to solve those problems. So when you get the errors, when you are trying to do something, you should appreciate because you are understanding how to debug. Because assuming that you are just doing things without getting the error, and then at one point in the future, for example, you are doing a big system, and then you get an error because you have never gotten any error. In future you will panic. But if you get those errors, don't think that you're not a genius, or maybe you're not perfect, or you have poor skills, or maybe you didn't understood. Just know that those errors will help you understand how to debug, how to solve those errors. Like for example, someone that got an error, like tried to use a print statement with capital, now can understand that Python is case sensitive. Whenever you want to use the built-in keyword in Python, you'll have to use the small case. Like if it's a print function, you must use it in small case. So you can see those errors has helped him to understand how to use the functions correctly. So those are the things that I can advise you as we continue with this series. So guys, for me, I've end unless you have a question. Any question, any concern, you are curious about something, you can now let me know. How is coding generally? How you've seen? Is it difficult, or how is it? Your general concerns, honest concerns. And I cannot tell you that it is. Go ahead.
I think it is just difficult before you start, but when you start, get errors,
Yes.
debug,
Yes.
and all those, I
Yes.
think it'll just be enjoyable.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Because generally, when you enrolled to this data science, it means that it's serious. Because in the future, you'll be solving the real world problems. Like someone will just tell you, like, create for me a recommender system. So you need to have understood what it involves. So there's a lot of process. Like these things just need commitment. I cannot tell you that it's easier. It is easier, but you need to be committed to it. Like I need to have that passion, so that in the event, even if it's difficult, it's how you can like move along with it. Like you need to practice a lot, until you master basically everything. Yeah. So I shouldn't ask you if it's easier or not, but what I will tell you, just to uh, force it, force issues. You have to force it until you master, but make sure that you understand. And that's the thing that I can say. Make sure that you understand. Use this opportunity to ask question in the event you don't understand, and so forth. Any other person who has anything to say?
I have a question.
Yes.
For those of us who are using the Google Colab, is there any
Yes.
other we can install the Jupyter Notebook further?
Jupyter Notebook. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Not,
So, what is
mhm.
the specs of your computer? By there, I can advise you the best way. What is the
Mm,
specs of your computer?
what do you mean? The,
Yes.
the what?
This specification, like the RAM, storage, so that I can advise you the best way to use it, like to use Jupyter Notebook.
Specification
Like, let me ask you, what is the RAM of your computer?
4 GB.
4 GB, and the storage?
Storage. I'm trying to check.
Oh, and the processing speed. Basically, I think that one will might be hard, but there's a tool that contains all these packages, notebook, because if you are in data science, we will be installing a lot of packages like NumPy, Pandas, SciPy, Seaborn, and all those. So the tool that has everything in it is called Anaconda. Anaconda. Let me search for Anaconda. Anaconda. When you just install Anaconda, let me just show you Anaconda. This one I'll give you as an assignment so that you can go out there, go to YouTube, learn how to use Anaconda. Okay, let me show you. So when you download this package, let me go to the download. So where's the download page? Okay, free download page. Let me see. My cursor is misbehaving. So when you go to this free download page, let's just read some basic overview or a description about this Anaconda. So with this Anaconda, it will come with the Jupyter Notebook pre-installed. So what you just do is just to run it. So it will work without like going to the terminal and doing a pip install and stuff. So just install this package. I don't know why the internet is not working. So when you just install, let me just give it some second. But there, I will advise any data scientist to download Anaconda. That's if your computer is good. if your computer has good specs, especially if you have a 8 GB RAM and so forth, and or maybe if you're using the SSD instead of the hard disk. SSD is much faster compared to the HDD, and also the processing speed on SSD computer machines is way much better than the HDD. That's when you can now master. So now I can see you have to register and stuff, but this package, you can see, in fact, in this summary here, you can see easily search and install thousands of data science, machine learning, and AI packages on the same app, on the same program here. This is Anaconda. You can see you can have thousands of data science, machine learning, and AI packages. And then this one you can manage. You can manage packages and environments from a desktop application or workflows. Like for example, when we were doing the PIP install Anaconda, it was going the system wide. But let me tell you another reason why you should use Anaconda. Let's assume that you are a developer and then you have a project that runs on Python 3.11, but you also have another program that requires Python 1.2 point something. So you realize that these programs will need different versions of Python. So this Anaconda will help you create several environments depending on your project. Like I can say, for example, at the moment we're using Python 3.12. So this Anaconda environment will help you create an environment specifically for that project. So it will not affect your system. So in the system, you can decide to choose a different type of version of Python, and then you can use a different type of Python, which is not affected to a different project that you're using on Anaconda. So this one I want to give you as an assignment. Go and search on YouTube how to download and install Anaconda, and then later go and search on how you can use Jupyter Notebook from the Anaconda environment. So go and try that. If you'll not be helped, then I think I'll show you in one of the sessions, perhaps. In the event you fail to understand how to use it, but you can just go to YouTube, then go and search how to download Anaconda. Basically, when you just sign in, then there'll be an option to download. When you just click on it, it's just an open source. Just click download, and then it's going to download. You can see they have listed some of the packages that it comes with. First of all, it is Jupyter, SciPy, Spider, NumPy, and such. Like you can see also TensorFlow. These are machine learning packages, Matplotlib and stuff. Yeah. So for you, I can't really tell the reason that you are facing, because the process of installing the Jupyter Notebook should be similar. The way I showed you earlier, you just go to, first of all, you download Python, the latest version, and then I just type a pip install notebook, not Jupyter Notebook. You just say notebook, and then it's going to install the notebook. If all of the options fails, then I just use the Jupyter Notebook. It's just the same. For example, here, let me try to delete. Here. Let me see. Okay, let me, in this new notebook, let's say print. Now, the only difference here is that it will use the internet, and say print, let me zoom in. When I say print hello world, then when I click on the run, now the run button is here. You should just click there. Then now the speed at which is going to get an output is going to depend also on the internet speed. Like I can see mine is taking forever because I think the internet is not that good. But you should get an output here. Let me give it a second. Yeah, so you can see now I can get now the hello world or a hello there. So when I run, I can now get the output here as hello there. So it's only similar. The only thing now, whenever you're using it on the web, you are not going to use your resources, system resources. Like this Jupyter is not using your system resource like a RAM and all those features. So this one is going to use it for Google, the Google specs. Like the RAM is going to use from the Google, and the disk is going to use from the Google. So it's not going to affect your system. And that is if you can't install Anaconda, if you can't install the Jupyter Notebook and all those, you can just use the online IDE, the online Jupyter Notebook. Will you be assisted? The one who has asked, or are you assisted? Ama ni stories za jaba. You've understood? Like other options that you can try. Basically, I cannot tell what's the problem exactly. Or can you share your screen? Let me stop first of all recording so that okay, perhaps it can help someone. Let me not stop recording. So, are you able to share your screen?
No, nishafunga.
Shafunga. All right. So go and try those options. If it will fail, then I think you will inbox me. Then I think I will try to figure out other options. But I can try those other options. It is still the same thing. Just the same thing. This is just an IDE. Jupyter Notebook is just an IDE. The same way you can use just Visual Studio Code, any other IDE. But for data science, then Jupyter Notebook is the best. All
Sir,
right. Mm-hmm.
should you register Anaconda 3 as your default Python?
Pardon?
Should you register Anaconda 3 as your default Python?
Anaconda 3.
Yeah.
Or are you talking about Python 3 interpreter?
Nilikuwa na download
Yes.
hiyo Anaconda
Mm-hmm.
na nikitaka kuinstall nimempatia kuna boxes unastahili utick na kuna moja hapa inasema register Anaconda 3 as my default Python 3.12.
Yeah. You can use that option. You use that
Sasa.
option. Yeah. I think you need to sign in, right? To install the Anaconda, right?
Nilifinya tu skip registration.
You can skip registration and you download.
Yes.
All right. So yeah. So guys, you can just go and search on how you can download that, and it will be much easier for you. Remember, for me, the reason I don't install a lot of programs because I code with other tools as well. That's why I don't want to have a lot of programs on my system. But if for you are just focusing on data science, then you can install. Also, if your system has good resources, Anaconda is best for data science because it has all the, yeah. Any question I want to go. All right, at 2 p.m. we can see now the link is recurring. It's a recurring link. So when it just reach at 2 p.m., then just join. So that we may save a lot. We may cover. Have a great evening.
Maandamano hakuna.
Sawa. Goodbye, guys. Oh, let me stop recording the Zoom. Okay, let me.